Welcome, folks, to the first edition of the No Such Thing podcast, formerly known as the Talk Tank podcast. Tonight we will have William on the show. William comes from Texas. He's an ex-Marine. William and I are going to be talking some Bigfoot and extraterrestrial goings-on from the great state of Texas and California. Glad you could all make it tonight. And in the background, providing some auditory splendor, is Northern Irish band St. Hellfire. Thanks, guys, for that contribution. And we're going to get right to it, and we're going to welcome William to the show.
My name is William Bustos.
And I met you on the Reddit forums, but I wanted to zone in more on the Bigfoot and the paranormal because it's more interesting to me.
Yeah.
I did a lot of different stuff. I did like prisoners. Shit, I can't even remember. I did a lot of like podcasts with my friends and stuff, but I wanted to zone in on the Bigfoot and paranormal because there's something definitely going on there, and I haven't experienced any of it myself, but I've heard so many people like on the I don't know if you listen to the, what the hell they call it, Sasquatch Chronicles.
I know of them, but I haven't listened to them. I've only recently really discovered podcasts.
Oh, really?
So I listen to a little bit when I ride my bike, or when I'm out jogging around. But I haven't really got into, I haven't discovered everything that's out there.
Well, yeah, I discovered podcasts about 10 years ago. One of my friends turned me on to it, and that's all I do. Is I listen to damn podcasts, and I just turned up the volume here. Yeah, so there's Sasquatch Chronicles, and there's a few others out there, but that's my favorite. But you hear these people talking, and I mean, I don't know what your experience is, but I saw the Paddy footage years ago.
Yeah.
And I've met a few people, and I just thought it was bullshit. I honestly did think it was bullshit. But when you hear these people talking, and they're like police officers, they're ICE agents, and they're Navy SEALs, and they're sitting there telling you, this is what I saw. And I even know a few people, like personally, that have saw something, and I can't just discount it. If I discount that kind of stuff, I'm, basically what I'm doing is I'm calling them a liar. They didn't see what they saw, and that's very, arrogant of me to say that, you've been out in the woods your whole life and you're a hunter, but you're full of shit. You didn't see what you saw, and I'm not a really big, woods guy. I grew up in the city and stuff, so. Who am I to say that they didn't see what they saw? So, but you have your own stories. So where do we start?
If you want to do the Sasquatch thing, I grew up listening to a lot of stories from my uncle. He lived about 7 miles out of town. We grew up in a really small town, about an hour east of San Antonio. And my uncle, he lived about 7 miles out of town north. And as long as I can remember, he would tell us stories about a big hairy creature that would come around at night. He wasn't afraid of his dogs. It was the other way around. The dogs were afraid of him or it. And he would, throw the patio furniture around and basically just make a mess out there, cause a ruckus. And my uncle was afraid of it. And as far as like he didn't know what it was. And he would say it's a big hairy man. And living out in the country, living out in Texas, everybody has rifles, everybody has guns. But he never wanted to shoot at it because he wasn't entirely sure what it was or what it wasn't. What if it was a man? For whatever reason, he never shot at it. So I guess that went on for several years. And still says to this day that he sees them around. I guess my uncle believes that the Bigfoot migrates, and he passes through that, piece of land. But I do remember as a kid, one time I was out there. I always liked going out there. They live down the country, and there's a creek and a bunch of land to run around as kids, And I remember there was a big handprint up on the window, of the side of the house, and couldn't figure out what it was. You could tell it was a big, dirty, muddy handprint. It wasn't of a person. It was something bigger, dirtier. Something that had been living out in the woods. And my uncle called the game warden, and the game warden showed up, and he's kind of perplexed about what's going on. And I was pretty young at the time, maybe about, 8 or 9 years old, I guess. And I remember the game warden being a really large man, and he had to step on a stool to put his hand up to where the window was, to where his handprint was, and that handprint on the window just dwarfed him. There was no way that was a man, that left that handprint. And the game warden was just like, I have no idea what this could be. And there was no explanation to what, left that handprint.
Is this East Texas? Because I've heard a lot of activity in East Texas.
It's more central.
The big thicket stuff.
Yeah, no, it's more central Texas. Pretty much San Antonio is central Texas. The Austin, San Antonio area is pretty much central Texas. And where my uncle lived was probably about an hour east of San Antonio and maybe a little over an hour south of Austin.
Where you're located, it's very wooded? Because when I think of Texas, I always just think of desert, scrub, and all that kind of stuff.
Texas is very big. So the west part of the state is very desert terrain, where it's big, open, scrub brush. But where we are, it's the end of the coastal plains. So there is a lot of open area, but there's a lot of really thick brush too. I remember camping at my uncle's land back there, and it was, the brush was really, really thick that there were places that we couldn't move through. We'd have to, go around. So it's very thick woods where he is. We grew up hearing all these stories about this creature coming around. Mostly at night. I'm sure. I don't particularly remember any day stories, but it was, middle of the night. It would come around. The dogs are barking. That creature would come around and just, cause a mess.
Okay. So, and then what happened next? You had some other encounters after that.
Really, he would just see it. It would come around. This, like I said, this went on for a few years, for several years. And, as I grew older, I would hear the stories in here, but I never saw anything myself. I've been gone from that area for, 27 years almost. I only get back there once every couple years. But the last I heard was that my uncle would still see it. It doesn't come up to the house anything anymore. He sees it out in the woods. Yeah.
Okay. So you're 18 years old, and you were traveling. This is what you sent me earlier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I want to hear that story. You were traveling a few miles, and you came up against some high cattails. I'd like to hear that story, because cattails are a big thing with Bigfoot. Apparently, they see them as a source of nutrition or stuff. I'm not sure, but that's what I've heard a lot.
It was in the morning time. It was about March or April, time of year. I was 18 years old. I was a senior in high school, and I had just left my hometown, and I was driving. It was probably 8 or 8:30 in the morning. I don't remember there being any crazy weather. It was pretty clear, sun up and everything. And I was coming around. There's a certain curve in the road that I've driven by, since I was a kid, and there was, a house, and right past that house, there's a big thing of cattails, or something big, some type of big, tall, skinny, plant. And as I'm coming up to it, I was probably, 50 yards away, driving probably 55 miles an hour, speed limit back then. And straight ahead, about a step or two from those cattails, was a large, hairy creature. And it was almost like I caught him crossing the road and he was trying to hurry up and get out of the way. And he stepped into those cattails. And, this whole thing lasted, a couple seconds, 2 or 3 seconds as I'm driving past. And I'm like, I wasn't scared or anything, but it was just really weird that I saw that. And I even told myself I wasn't sure that I saw what I saw. But I remember looking in the rearview mirror, and I could see those cattails, all the bushes and everything, moving around as there was something in there. I didn't see it come out the other side. I kept on driving, but it was the stereotypical Sasquatch, big, dark brown or black, bipedal, hairy. And it really looked like I caught him in the middle of the road, and he wasn't expecting a car coming, and he was trying to, hurry up and get out of view.
What height do you think this thing was?
8 feet.
That's everybody says, yeah. That's
yeah,
big.
I mean, it's a pretty big. It wasn't, man size. It was big. I don't think it was, more than 9 or 10 feet. I think 10 feet would have probably been pushing it. But I think if I had to guess, my answer would probably be about 8 feet, give or take a little bit. And from that spot to where my uncle lives, it's only a few miles, as the crow flies. So it's basically the same area. Where I saw that, and where my uncle lives.
So that makes sense. Your uncle did see something then.
And he's had those stories for years and years. And I just thought of something else that popped in my head a while back. My junior high, my middle school science teacher. It was rumored. I never saw this, but it was rumored that his son had taken a picture of a large white Bigfoot, and that he had saw it out in the country somewhere, out in the middle of nowhere, I guess, and that he took a picture of it, and the creature just stepped over the barbed wire fence, which is 4.5 feet high, however high they are. That it just cruised over it, and I guess some of the other kids had asked the science teacher about it, and he really didn't want to talk about it. And but I knew people that said that they had seen that picture. I've never seen it, but it's supposedly it's out there. That picture exists, and that was 30 years ago when I was in middle school, more than 30 years ago. But that's all, the same area. Yeah.
So do you remember, could you get any facial expressions, or did you see it that close enough to make out its face? Was it human or was it monkey?
No. From my memory, everything was very stereotypical, kind of, the patty, looking, creature. But when I saw it, I was 40, 50 yards away, driving, and it definitely surprised me, and I wasn't, and the whole thing lasted a couple seconds.
It was definitely a bipedal primate looking thing running into the cattails.
It was really big, like I said, dark brown, black, bipedal, hairy, and I could tell by looking at it that it was a something large. It wasn't a skinny something. It had, bulk to it. Yeah.
Now, when you look at the Paddy footage, obviously, a lot of people don't know, listen to this podcast, maybe if they've been hiding under a rock, but it's the female Bigfoot in 67, was it, or 66?
67.
Yeah, that was walking through the trees in Willow Creek, and, when you look at that thing, people just by default think that was just somebody in a suit. But when you look at that and you research it, that's not somebody in a suit. When you see that thing look back at you, there's consciousness there in its face.
Yeah,
you can really see it.
There's been a lot of people who have studied that film, and it's probably it's fair to say that that's probably the most studied piece of Bigfoot evidence, out there. Yeah, and what I saw was pretty much that. It was something big, hairy, bulky, big.
So it wasn't some people talk about like a bodybuilder, like ripped, like look, but it was more of a Paddy kind of frumpy look.
It was more of a bodybuilder who hadn't been to the gym in a while, who wasn't
like myself.
It wasn't so chiseled as much as there was just mass there.
Like juvenile maybe or something. Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot of activity around Texas, and maybe it's kind of like homeless people. They go down there to, there's hogs to eat, and there's like hot weather, and I don't know, I hear of some accounts around my area in Massachusetts, and it's like freezing. I'm like, how do these people, how would they sustain themselves around here? So maybe they migrate. I'm not sure. But I'm totally sold on the idea, and I really do believe that there is something. And you mentioned, were you in the military at all, or you just worked? You were in the military.
I'm Marine Corps retired.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you had a story about a military base too. You want to go into that?
There's I've heard other stories, not anything firsthand about Bigfoot, but I've read other military stories or people that were in the military that talking about Bigfoot, Sasquatch. I was prior to living where I am now, we were stationed out in Washington State, in Pierce County, which as anyone knows, that's prime Bigfoot country out there. So I've talked to people out there too, and it's really something to hear their stories. I've seen casts of people go out, investigating, and they've taken casts, and I've heard audio recordings and stuff like that.
Well, it's funny because even it's so active up there apparently that when they were shooting Star Wars up there, I think it was Return of the Jedi. I'm not too sure, but they were I know that Return of the Jedi was shot in Redwood Forest in California, but they were shooting one in one location in Washington in the woods, and Chewbacca was told that Anthony Daniels, is that what it's called? Mm-hmm. He was told not to stray too far into the woods because a hunter might shoot him, thinking that he was a Bigfoot. That's how serious it was. He was warned.
There's a lot of investigators out there.
Yeah, I would love to go up there, like Olympia State Forest and stuff. That'd be cool to visit. But yeah, so you had, and I'm just looking up my message that you sent me earlier. You had some more stuff. You were you were taking part in a big live exercise, or you were observing it?
Oh, yeah. That was probably I think it was about 2002. And I was driving a VIP, we'll say that. And he wanted to observe the live fire training out there. So I drove him out there, dropped him off with the unit, and he was going to kind of walk behind them. So I pulled back off the road, off the range, further back, a couple of thousand meters at least. It was maybe a little more, more than that. But there was like a little staging area on side of the road. And so I'm staying there, and I know it's going to be a couple hours before he needs me to pick him back up, and I'm just hanging out. And I see something flying, up in the sky. And I think it's just a piece of trash. The wind picked it up or something. But it looked really weird. It didn't behave like a garbage bag, a trash bag or something that was being, flown around. And so it caught my attention. And I watched it. And I got some binoculars that were in the Humvee with me, and as I'm looking at it, what it looks to be is pyramid shaped, a 4-sided pyramid, and not very big. Like I said, I thought it was like a grocery bag or something. So, a couple feet across. It wasn't real big. But it was pyramid shaped, and it was spinning. And as it's spinning, it's traveling also. It's traveling northwest, toward that range. And it wasn't moving very fast. And it just went toward where that training exercise was taking place. And as it does, and I'm watching it the whole time through these binoculars. And it moves up to where the training is, and it just kind of hovers, off to one side above. It looked like it was observing what was going on, down on the ground. And then after a little while, it started to move again, and it moved, further northwest over the ridge line, and it was gone. And the whole thing took place. It was half an hour from the first time, from when I saw it until, that I couldn't see it anymore once it flew off. I have no idea what it was. It wasn't, a drone. It wasn't, anything like that. And it was just really, really peculiar. And I didn't know exactly what it was. And, to this day still, it was just really weird that it just happened there. And nobody said nothing about it. Nobody, I never really told anybody, but no, I would have known if there was, UAVs, drones, stuff like that, just because of the job that I was doing and who I was working with.
Well, the funny thing is that one of the counter arguments against it being a military, some kind of secret technology is. Yeah, they were seeing, like, in the 70s and 60s, they were seeing these, like, disc-shaped UFOs, and it was, like, secret military intelligence, but where are those secret military UFOs now? We've never seen them since. They haven't deployed them, so obviously it wasn't a secret military program because they haven't used them in military theater. So obviously it was something else. So what the hell is it? Well, it's not Russian. It's because we haven't seen them they haven't disclosed that, and we haven't seen the involvement of some type of a UFO type craft. So it's obviously not us. It's got to be otherworldly or interdimensional. I'm not sure, but it's very, very strange. And those Arizona lights and stuff, that whole thing. Well, that was crazy. Yeah. I mean, that was like so blatant, and I tried to say that was flares.
Yeah, that was not flares. That's not flares.
That wasn't flares. It was so coordinated. I mean,
where that military base is out in the desert of California, it's not very far from Area 51.
Right.
It's basically just the other side of the Mojave. So it's not it's not far. So it was just a really weird sighting, and like I said, it caught my eye. and it just behaved so weird that it really got my attention, and I watched that thing, for a long time. And this was, middle of the day. It wasn't nighttime. It wasn't, anything. Nothing crazy. It was middle of the day. I watched it for at least half an hour, probably more.
How far away was it?
From where I was, it was probably a couple hundred yards away, and probably 50, 60 yards up. Off the ground.
How big was it? Would you estimate? From
what I could tell, like I said, I originally thought it was one of those white grocery bags you get from Walmart, or wherever. So it seemed to be about that big. That's what I thought it was at first, and I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Probably a couple feet across either way.
That's strange. How long ago was that?
That was first half of 2002.
Yeah, so there weren't many drones around in those days.
And the job that I was doing, I have been out there with DARPA when they had experimental drones, when they were coming up with whatever. So one, I would have known that they were going to do drones out there.
Right.
Two, that live fire range would not have had drones anywhere near them. It was a company-sized a training exercise that would not have involved anything.
Yeah, there's no reason to have drones.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had anybody out there doing anything crazy like that.
Yeah, you would know the lay of the land. You know what should be there and shouldn't be there. You're in the industry. Yeah, that makes sense. So that's why I like talking to people like you, because the layperson doesn't really know about all this shit, and they can go on about conspiracy theories all night. But when you have someone like yourself that's kind of like educated on the subject, you see something that might be a drone, but you're like, well, there's not going to be any drones around here, so people tend to listen to people like you. So it's good to have people like you on the show to give credence to stuff like this.
Yeah. And it wasn't moving very fast. Drones, they can get some pretty good speed. This thing was moving slow. It was definitely taking its time. Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, I would love to. I haven't seen anything. I heard a growl one time when I was like 15 years old. We were walking up the steps of an old school we used to visit, and we heard a growl that was like a lion. And we're in Ireland, there's nothing bigger than a badger, or a dog. And we heard this growl, and it shook us. And my friends and I, it was like 10 of us. Some of them, we were on steps, like 45-degree angle. One of them jumped over my head. He was so scared, and we all ran, and we were like falling and like tripping over each other. It was the weirdest. That was the only weird thing that's ever happened to me, and I cannot, to this day, figure out what it was.
Well, I know over there in that part of the world, you have what they call the alien big cats. That there's possibly some, large cats out there, jaguars, leopards, stuff like that have been documented. Yeah. There's people with pictures of them and stuff, but there's been no proof yet.
Oh, yes, that's right. Now, have you heard of the whole black dog syndrome? I'm sure you've talked to veterans who've come back from Iraq and Afghanistan.
The only thing really I know about black dogs, that people late at night see them when they're traveling down the road.
Yeah.
But that's about it. I haven't really heard much more than that. Than they're out there. People have seen them.
There's some veterans that have come back from Iraq and Afghanistan that have come across these creatures, and they're 4 foot tall. And I have done some research into it, and I think it was Lore, the podcast Lore with Ireland or someone. He had a whole history lesson on the phenomenon of the black dog appearing in different periods of history, and apparently it's saw all around the world as far back as ancient Egypt. So that gives a lot of credence to a lot of these veterans seeing these big black, like black as night dogs in places like Afghanistan on military bases, and apparently their guardians are. Some people say they're guardians. So like maybe in times of war, the black dog comes along to as some sort of guardian. But sometimes people say they're demonic, so the jury's out on that one. But it's very interesting, if you have any veteran friends, well, I'm sure they're not going to come out and talk about it. But some people have on Sasquatch Chronicles, they've talked about the whole black dog thing. They've had a few veterans on there, and it's really interesting.
Well,
well, hey, thanks for anything else you want to disclose?
I've got, I grew up listening to a lot of stories, most of them just, different uncles trying to scare us kids. I'm always interested in Bigfoot stuff. Pretty much any paranormal, ghosts, UFOs. I love Sasquatch.
Oh, Sasquatch is real, for sure.
Yeah. But I like, the whole Loch Ness Monster thing gets me going. I'm just really interested, all around in anything. The Beast of Bray Road is a really good story.
Isn't that the one? Is that Whitehall?
No, that's different one. That's the Beast of Whitehall. There's a
Whitehall.
one called.
Well, you've heard of Small Time Monsters.
That's the podcast that's how I discovered podcasts.
Right. Well, the audio producer, or whatever, he does all the score for that. He's coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Wow.
I think his name's Aaron. I can't remember. I totally can't remember. But he's offered to come on the podcast. Oh, yeah. Shit. You just lost you there for a second. But yeah. He's going to be coming on to the podcast. Let me just check. He sent me a message. Brandon from Small Time Monsters. He does the audio for a lot of the audio score for, the Beast of Bray Road and the Ghost of, or the Whitehall thing. He does all that. So he's going to come on soon. So that's going to be exciting.
That's a great organization they got going there. I enjoy their work very much.
I haven't seen it because it's on Amazon Prime, and my wife has Prime, but she's not here right now, and she doesn't remember her password, of course.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on there.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, hey man, thanks for coming on the show, and I'm going to get this up in the next couple of days, and I really appreciate it. Stay in touch.
Okay, will do.